Hi folks, Richard Pallaziol again here with Weapons of Choice, and today I'm going to talk about the essentials of unarmed stage combat. These are the precepts we must keep in mind whenever we design or perform a stage fight, and while much of this can also apply to sword fights, these tenets are specifically for unarmed stage combat, which is far and away more common for stage than any sword fight. So what is stage combat? Very simply, the simulation of violent actions for a theatrical production. Yes, it's a simulation, it's not the real thing. Boxing, wrestling, karate, those things will help inform what we do. It'll give it a specific shape, a look, a feeling. But we don't actually use those techniques in stage combat because we're not fighting, we're storytelling. Violent actions, not necessarily violent intent. Slapstick is full of this. Someone doesn't mean to trip someone or hit them on the head, but it happens. We use it for comedy, but even in other areas where it doesn't even seem like it's any part of a fight at all, just grabbing someone to grab their attention, to hold on to them, to keep them from leaving. That's stage combat as well. And it's for a theatrical production, not for a stunt show. It's not for film. It's not for any kind of improvisation. These are not stunts. Stage combat is always within the realm of what any actor should be able to do. Now, if you want to add stunts to your show, that's great, but no actor should be asked to do them without being fully aware of the risks and, for my money, being paid commensurate to taking on that risk. I'll explain the difference between stunts and stage combat in a bit. But first, stage combat, just like any magic act, works because humans have some limitations when it comes to perception, and we exploit those limitations. For one thing, we have very poor depth perception. Relatively speaking, our depth perception works well within about 20 or 30 feet at most. Beyond that, we're counting on other cues to help us know how far away something is. Our brains fill in any visual gaps that we have. That's great for us. It's horrible if you're an eyewitness to a crime, but luckily the brain will fill in anything that it didn't actually see, and it'll incorporate it into its memory. You'll convince yourself that you actually saw it. We track movement very poorly. When things are actually in motion, it's kind of a blur to us, and we'll certainly take advantage of that many times over. And also, our brains create stories based on past experiences. Our brains expect certain things to happen if they've seen something similar happen before. Now, in stage combat, we use those limitations and manipulate them to create guidelines. And those guidelines of stage combat come to us directly from the founder of our craft, VINO SPAR. VINO SPAR was born in Macchecazzo, Italy in 1809, trained in the art of pigro stronzo, and achieved local renown as a buono a niente with the famed Gruppo dei Idioti theater What? Oh. Okay, you're right. I just made all that up. But VINO SPAR is a kind of a pocket fight instructor to which you can refer when you're faced creating onstage violence. Keep him with you always, and he will aid you in keeping actors safe, even if you have forgotten the specific techniques. Since I live in Napa, California, I created the first acronym of VINO. VINO lays out the guidelines to help you decide how you're going to handle the violent actions in a play. These 4 rules should always be running through your head in stage combat. VINO is certainly always running through mine. The first rule, the victim has to stay in control. In any simulation, one actor is the aggressor and the other is the victim. This isn't a moral judgment and may change back and forth many times during the fight, but with every act, one person, the aggressor, does something or causes something which the other person, the victim, receives. The victim's control is absolute. That's why we don't actually push that actor or punch or kick or throw or grab the actor. We create the illusion, yes, but if the victim doesn't want to move, it doesn't happen. The victim decides the timing, not the aggressor, and the victim can terminate the illusion at any time. That goes for gravity as well, by the way. The victim has to be able to stop any action at any time, even in the middle of a fall or a roll. The victim should be able to freeze in mid-tumble. That goes for a tumble down a flight of stairs, by the way, as needed and noise is off. Whatever it is, if you can't do it in slow motion, you mustn't ever do it at regular speed. And that's the big difference between stage combat and stunt work. In a stunt, the performer gives herself up to possible hard contact with another person or the floor or a wall or a crash pad. All of that entails risk. In stage combat, we're always working to remove danger and reduce the risk as much as possible. Stage combatants must establish an interactive flow of energy which tells a single story. This is partnered pantomime, and it requires that both actors constantly evaluate how each move either supports or detracts from that simulation. How far does the victim need to travel after a punch? Does the aggressor's punch seem to transfer the right amount of energy for that to convincingly happen? If the two people aren't working together to create a single illusion, it's going to be off. If I'm working on a new fight with someone that I've never worked with before, I know that it'll take about 1 hour of rehearsal time for each 5 seconds of finished fight. If I'm working with someone whom I've worked with many times before and has a lot of experience, I know it'll take about 1 hour of rehearsal time for each 5 seconds of finished fight. Because I'm not just going through the mechanics of it, I have to learn what my partner has brought into the character. N. Non-contact techniques exhaust the possibilities of not actually punching someone in the stomach or slapping someone in the face. Because anytime you make contact with an actor, part of them stops being their character. They have to... O. Take your energy offline, off target. Instead of rushing in toward a partner, I'm going to move into an area slightly upstage and then move in. Instead of sending a punch towards my partner's face, I'm going to send my punch where my partner isn't. Now when it comes time to develop the actual illusion, use SPAR. This is how we break down every action. When the illusion doesn't quite work, it's usually because we've neglected one of the 4 parts of SPAR. On any violent act, we have to examine the reality first. What does a real punch look like? Go through it in slow motion. Really notice all of the 3-dimensional moving parts that add up to the singular act. Now take that 3D motion picture and imagine it from the audience's point of view. Now they think they're seeing something in 3 dimensions, but really they only see a flattened picture, a 2-dimensional representation. And as long as we don't violate that 2D image, we have a lot of leeway in creating a new action in 3 dimensions that can keep the actors free from danger. Setup. This is where you both establish the correct distance, and the aggressor checks in with the victim to see if they're going to proceed. If possible, some physical contact will be made, but the audience should not recognize any part of the violent act yet. If the victim decides that they shouldn't do the simulation for any reason, we haven't committed ourselves to telling the story of a violent act yet. Way too many people rush through this or ignore this, and again, sloppy results when that happens. The picture. Give the audience a brief picture of what you want them to believe is going to happen. This will give them the start of a story you need them to buy into. Breathe in as you create this picture. It's just a fraction of a second, you don't have to make a meal out of it, but make sure that everyone in the audience can see it. And now the action. This is the part that actors are excited about doing, but is in reality the least important part, because this is the part that the audience usually doesn't see. What we're going for here is to hide the moment of impact, and at that same time we add a sound which would be appropriate to that strike. It might be a percussive sound, a smack, a thud, but no matter what, both actors should add a breath sound, vocalized or not. So, for both actors, breathe out during the action. Now the reaction. Here's where you get to show the audience another picture, what you wanted them to believe. They'll tie this in with the initial picture and the sound of the action, creating a beginning, a middle, and end for this little story. Many times the audience will actually believe that they saw someone striking someone else. Their brain has filled in the story and we didn't have to put anyone in danger. The reaction has 3 levels of reality. The physical, because it must obey the laws of physics, the laws of motion. The physiological, because an impact would cause pain or bruising or injury. And also emotional. How does the character feel about what just happened? And that's from both actors. The characters in the play are both changed forever when something violent happens. So give yourself that moment in the reaction to let that soak in, to let that change who the character is. It might be a small change, it might be a large change, but if you don't give it its moment, that's really worse than being unrealistic. In rehearsal, move slowly. There's so much to learn, there's so much to go through, but if you try to take things at full speed, you'll miss all of them. You need time to evaluate every part of your pantomime to make sure that it all creates a cohesive, logical story. Now, by the time you're in tech week, everything about the fight should be polished to performance level. Now, here's where you can take the speed up to about 80% of normal. Don't go at full speed or the audience won't be able to savor the performance. You want them traveling with you on the journey. If you move too quickly and leave them behind, they'll resent it and they'll resent you. Take them with you. You can only go as fast as you can tell the story. All of the story. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking about setting up an arbitrary speed limit on stage combat. You can take it as fast as you want. I'm the very model of a modern major general. Is not as clear to the audience as I am the very model of a modern major general. Both of those were done in the same amount of time. But in the first one, it was too fast relative to the actor's ability. The second one wasn't. So you can take any fight as fast as you want, as long as it's clear to the audience and safe to your partner. Firm rule here. Anything in the fight that hasn't been perfected before the first dress or first technical rehearsal must be cut from the show. Tech Week is not the time to hope that the fight will improve. Okay, folks, that's it for today. We've covered some of the really critical essentials of stage combat. I hope you'll always keep VINO and SPAR with you, because in the future, whether it's a simple simulation of just a slap or a big combat scene, whether you're a beginner, whether you're advanced, remember those precepts because they will help you establish an exciting fight and also, we hope, prevent serious injuries from happening. So again, if you liked this video, I hope that you'll press the like button. Any comments I'll respond to. And as always, play safe, stay safe. Salut!